Prologue. We mentioned earlier that Sri Ramakrishna completed his sadhana after worshipping the Sodashi Puja in 1873, so it would not be inappropriate to say that from that point on everything he did in his life was inspired by the divine mood. The master was then 38 years old. So from that age of 39, he remained in divine mood until the end of his life, a little more than 12 years later. During this period, all of his actions were transformed into view and extraordinary events by the will of Divine Mother. Driven by her will, he concentrated on imparting spirituality to modern, Western educated people. It is therefore evident that after practicing austerities for 12 full years, the Master spent 6 years becoming familiar with his own power and with the spiritual condition of the masses. He devoted the next 12 years to halting the decline of religion in India, which had been brought about by the tremendous influence of worldly Western ideas and ideals, and to re-establishing the eternal religion. When his work was over, he departed from this world. We shall now describe as best as we can how he accomplished his mission. The reader may think from our earlier statements that the Master remained a spiritual aspirant until his 39th year. This is not so. We tried to explain earlier in Sri Ramakrishna as a Guru, the third part of this book, that in those who have received the world's enduring adoration for benefiting humanities as Gurus, prophets or founders of religion, we see the manifestation of divine qualities from childhood onward. We find the qualities of a Guru in the Master's life as early as his childhood. We know that in his youth he did many spectacular things during his sadhana inspired by the divine mode. When he had completed his sadhana at the age of 32, he went on a pilgrimage with Mathur. We see that the Master continued to perform most of his actions as directed by the same mood during that pilgrimage and afterwards. We have pointed out that the divine mood became completely manifest in the Master in 1875 when he began to propagate his spiritual mission. At that time, Western materialism, science and civilization were having a profound influence on the Indian people, making them extremely materialistic and diverting them from the path of eternal religion. So, from this point on, the Master was constantly driven by the divine mode to take a stand against the Western influence and to instill spirituality among English-educated youths. He thus blessed the lives of many people. It was extremely important for the Master to act as he did at that time. If the Master's divine life, fortified with extraordinary spiritual power, had not by the grace of God held back the forces of Western materialism, it is likely that India's national character and the eternal religion would have disappeared forever. In fact, it is evident that the Master did immense good to people in all countries by practicing most of the world religions and discovering this great truth: as many faiths, so many paths. For 12 years, he demonstrated an ideal life to Western educated people and tried to infuse them with spirituality, thus checking the current of Western materialism and enabling India to avoid a terrible crisis. The first mission of the Master's life was to unite the prevalent religious paths with the eternal religion and to prove that they are all of equal importance, even though each one appeals to individuals of different temperaments and tendencies. His second mission was to prevent India from sinking into the terrible current of Western materialism. In the same year that English education was officially introduced in India, 1836, the Master was born. The Master's power mitigated the negative aspects of Western education while absorbing the positive aspects and simultaneously helped India maintain her own character. It is amazing that these two forces appeared in India simultaneously by providence. The full manifestation of the divine mood, the pinnacle of spiritual realization, is rarely seen in human life. When an individual becomes free from the fetters of karma by God's grace, he or she can taste a little of that divine mood. When a person's control over the mind and external senses become as effortless and natural as breathing, when the little I consciousness loses itself in love of the Supreme Self and merges forever into the ocean of indivisible Satchidananda, when the mind and intellect are purified in Nirvikalpa Samadhi and assume completely pure sattvic forms, when the unending flow of desires is completely dried up by the blazing fire of knowledge and is incapable of producing any new tendencies and actions, it is only then that this divine mood appears and the individual's life becomes blessed. Rarely can we find a person in whom the divine mood has manifested itself completely, bringing everlasting contentment. And because such a person's actions are not prompted by desire, they appear to be without any motivation. That person then becomes incomprehensible to ordinary people. Only one who is established in the divine mood can comprehend the true nature of that state. It is not possible for ordinary minds and intellects like ours to understand even partially the extraordinary activities performed at the prompting of that mood unless we study them with deep faith and reverence. Only avatars possess the most complete manifestation of the divine mood, as the religious history of the world testifies. This is why the character of an avatar is always mysterious to us. We can imagine only an incomplete picture of the state of knowledge of Brahman, which is devoid of Maya. But we cannot understand how the knowers of Brahman dwell in that state effortlessly and naturally, or how and why their actions are sometimes like ours and sometimes like those of all-powerful gods. Both our imagination and reason are completely defeated by this mystery, so it is not possible to completely describe Sri Ramakrishna's activities during this period. We can only give the reader a chronology of his activities and describe how we guessed at the motive behind each of his actions by observing the results. We can thus measure the greatness of the cause by evaluating the importance of the effect. It will not take long to understand the extent to which divine mood manifested in the master's heart if we reflect upon the extraordinary nature of his activities during this period. Although the activities of Sri Ramakrishna, who was then established in the divine mood, were performed only for the sake of establishing eternal religion, they can be classified into 7 major groups. He molded the spiritual life of his immaculate and virtuous wife Sri Sharda Devi in a remarkable way and made her a powerful dynamo capable of transmitting spirituality to others. With his spiritual power, he sought to perfect the lives of those religious leaders in Calcutta who were already guided by high ideals. He shared his spirituality with seekers of all religious paths who came to Dakshineshwar, thus quenching their thirst. He classified his marked disciples, whom he had previously seen in visions, according to their capacities, and he worked to develop their spiritual lives. He initiated some of his disciples into the vow of renunciation so that they would realize God, and made them conduits for disseminating his unique universal religious views to the world. He frequently visited the homes of his devotees in Calcutta and inspired their families and friends with his spiritual talks and devotional singing. He firmly tied his devotees with a wonderful cord of love and created remarkable unity among them. As a result, they became very close to one another and eventually formed an inclusive religious organization. The master started the first of these 7 types of activity in 1874, as we described in the last portion of the second volume of this book. In the appendix of the same volume, we discussed how he began the second type in 1875 when he visited Keshab Chandra Sen, leader of the Brahmo Samaj. We presented to the reader 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th types of activity in general way in the 5th, 6th and 7th chapters of this book. Now we describe how and when the master undertook the remaining 5th and 7th types.